Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and I'm just here tonight to let you know that the NFL scouting combine is over for 2024, and all of the numbers have rolled in. And I'm assuming that it's going to affect the positioning of a lot of players in the draft. I've taken a preliminary look at all of it, and I can see where some of it's going to affect certain players. And so my intention is to do a video pretty soon just talking about players that might have seen a bump from the combine up or down. But, there's a lot of channels doing that right now, and they were actually there and saw all of this. Me personally, as a fan, I can get excited about certain things as far as these measurables go, as far as these talents, these traits that these athletes might have. But, usually whatever you see on the film, that's what you got to go with. I mean, if a guy can run fast in a straight line, but you watch the film and he looks slow, then you're talking about he's got a potential. If he has a chance to run in a straight line, there's just varying degrees of how to look at all of this. So sometimes they do something and it surprises me. Like somebody performs at the combine to a level of an athlete that you didn't think the person actually was. Well, they're a better athlete at the combine than they ever showed as a player on the film. So does that really, that sways people. So I guess, you know, I'm looking at the film. That's what really I'm going on. And if he has the athletic ability to perform all of these tricks, 40-yard dash, shuttle, cone, bench press, to me, bench press kind of is important. If you show you have upper body strength, then, that kind of gives you a number of how strong you really are. But still, if you're on the film and you don't look strong and you're not playing with strength, and then you go to the combine and do 30 something reps, then everybody all of a sudden thinks you have strength. You never exhibited it. So I guess in a way you're kind of like, we know he's strong, so we can just coach him to be better at utilizing his strength. Or if they're a 6'4" tall guy and they don't use their size well enough, you can coach them into using their size well enough. I mean, it's like little nuances like that. But what do you really learn from the combine aside from little bitty tiny nuances like that, where a guy whose film you didn't really care for, but then he goes to the combine and performs great. And all of a sudden you're willing to take him in the third round instead of the fifth round because he was able to do all of these tricks. He's able to jump really high and hit something. So, yeah. So basically what I'm saying as far as the combine goes is if you think a player's fast and then he runs a 4.21, then yeah, he's fast. He proved he was fast. And if he ever gets in that situation where he can run in a straight line, he's going to be a half a second faster than he's going to be a half a tenth of a second or a tenth of a second faster than everybody else on the field. Okay. So basically, overall, it's fun, it's neat, and I love seeing a person who's good at something exhibit talent doing other things, right? It's nice to see a guy who can play wide receiver run track too, or a guy who's really heavy can still broad jump really far. But I mean, yeah, it's an indication of how much power and burst he has with his legs, but you can watch the film and see this. So anyway, it's important and it's going to affect certain players' stock, but in my opinion, I mean, it's just one of those things. You're either confirming what you already saw on tape, or you're learning that a guy can be more athletic than he's showing you on tape, or you're learning that a guy doesn't perform at these tricks as athletically as you thought he would based on the tape. So everything's going back to the tape, which to me is the most important thing. And if you're stuck in a school that doesn't utilize you well, if you're a team and you have to project what this guy can be good at because of his failed utilization in college, and then you see these traits that can affect you a certain way too. I'd rather look at the Senior Bowl practices and in the game, something like that, where they're actually in a football situation doing football things. I would rather take a surprise from looking at a player from that situation than from the combine. You see, I mean, what's the big surprise? I'm watching these people review the combine, and they're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea he could run 4.85. I thought he was going to run a 5 flat." Okay, he's a defensive lineman, so I guess that means if the running back gets slowed up and he tries to cut it back upfield, this guy's just fast enough to catch up to him 15 yards down the field and get him. I mean, you, you hope you see the traits on the film. You hope you see the effort. A guy that doesn't play fast on the field, then runs a really fast 40, tells me that he's not using the effort he could be using when he's on the field. Or that speed, that kind of straight line speed will never translate in his game. You see what I mean? It's just a way to go about it. Now, if I was involved in a football team, I wouldn't pass on the scouting combine at all. It's very important when it comes to all these things that are just going by rumor now because we're not there to do it ourselves, which is actually sit down, talk to the players, interview them, get to know them, ask them certain things. Like I learned in a conversation somebody had there, and then they reported it that Amarius Mims, the offensive right tackle from Georgia, who only started 8 games in his college career, he said that he practiced at 60% right tackle, 40% left tackle when he was at Georgia. So I didn't know that despite his lack of starts and despite the fact that he was at right tackle his entire career, as a starter, that he was actually working on the left side the whole time. You don't see it on the film because he didn't go out there, but you learn about it through a conversation at the scouting. That's more valuable to me than what Amarius Mims actually did. I can say, wow, he jumped a little further than I thought he would, or I can say, whoa, he really is the athlete we thought he was. I can just judge him on the film. But what I couldn't judge him on is whether he could play that left side. Now that I know he practiced 40% on the left side, I know that at least he can do it. At least he's trying. At least he's working on it already. That excites me more than a 4.21 from a guy that I already knew was fast. I mean, it's great to break records and stuff like that. So I'm not going to take nothing away. If you enjoy the scouting combine, and like I said, I'm interested too. I'm really interested when somebody breaks a record. It's like, wow. And then I look at all of the players that are in that top, the record breaker. You had Xavier Worthy, right? Go 4.21. And then the next 5 or 10, I looked at all of those players. And there might have been 2 that I recognized as decent football players. Decent football players. So when I was looking at the list, it reminded me, harsh light of day, right? Wow, you're really fast. So maybe all 10 of those guys should have been in track instead of football because none of them really turned out to be anything. So that's what I'm saying. I do get a lot out of the scouting combine. How much a wide receiver can bench rep, I get a lot out of that because I want to know if he can run block. I want to know if he's going to get pushed around on the field if it's press coverage. So I look into all of it too. The cone and splits and shuttle times that indicate somebody's quickness or their flexibility. All that stuff's important. You can see it on the film if they're a football player. So like that's what I'm talking about. If a guy doesn't exhibit good bend on the field, but then he goes to the combine and he does this drill and you say, hey, he really does have good bend. Well, what does that tell you? He can't play with it. So perhaps you think you can coach him up. He's got the trait. We can work with it. So yeah. And all in all, there are players that are going to benefit from this, but in my opinion, it should be stuff that you already knew. And if it is a reflection of something that you didn't know before, chances are it just kind of reflects on how they underperformed on the film. So that's my view of the scouting combine and the results. So I'm not going to be, going into full crazy mode and covering all of it, except to say that a few measurables changed, and that changes perspectives on certain players. And not only just measurables that the colleges got wrong or that were just reported wrong, but I mean stuff like height and weight and everything else. Players sometimes slim down before the combine, sometimes they bulk up, and some of these fluctuations were massive. So, that kind of stuff interests me. It tells me a person can lose weight and gain weight pretty quick. It also tells me, that there's a chance that they might be too small or too big. So anyway, it interests me, but it's not the big crazy news that it used to be for me back when I was younger, and I just watched it for the spectacle. And you should watch it for the spectacle. These are some of world-class athletes doing some phenomenal things. But as far as what they're doing at the combine physically, and then what they already did on the film and what they can do on the film, I think football is a different beast than track and field. All right, that's my video. I'll be working a lot in the future, and probably gonna still try to put out 2 videos a week. I've covered the players in the combine pretty thoroughly, done a lot of mock drafts. So subscribe to Rosenfield 10 to keep up on Saints news. And I am a fan of the Saints, so I'm going to give you my perspective from a Saints fan's perspective. Try to keep it as real as possible. Call out anybody that's saying dumb stuff, but I can do that too. And yeah, I'll be doing a couple more videos before the draft concerning the draft. But as far as the scouting combine goes, um, a lot of these players could definitely transition into track and field. All right. I'm Joe, and I'll talk to you later. Who dat? Oh, and by the way, this is Buttons. This is Buttons, one of my 12 cats. He's got buttons. And I'm going to kiss him because he's beautiful. He's my angel. I got a bunch of angels.